Welcome to our cloud, open source cloud technology shootout, I think is what we originally described it as. Though we have made sure that none of these guys actually have guns. And Adrian's from Texas, so you never can know, because down there in Texas, well, that's just pretty much standard equipment, isn't it?
That's right.
So, just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I'd like to thank RightScale for sponsoring lunch. Again, they weren't responsible for the food, they just paid for it. Hopefully it was all good. Everybody have enough to eat, all that good, happy stuff? All right, thanks, RightScale. At the end of the show, if you fill out your conference evaluation forms, remember, last year I explained this, Zend is more than willing to buy you with $5 worth of cloth. So here we go. If you want this cool Pac-Man themed t-shirt, fill out your conference evaluation form at the end of the conference, turn it in, and this could be yours. The hackathon is filling up fast, so if you haven't signed up for the hackathon, there's still an opportunity for free beer and prizes, but not for much longer. And we do have, in case something goes horribly wrong again, we have our friendly flying elephant. These things are going fast, by the way. How many people actually have one of their elephants in the audience? See, look at that. You look around and see all those hands up. If you haven't gone for your elephant hunt yet, you could be in trouble. I know. It's going to be gone. All right, so I'm going to actually, the way I'm going to handle this is it's a Q&A session. We're going to have some canned questions here that we want to ask up front, but there's stand mics on both of the aisleways. So if you want to ask a question of this panel as we get going, go to the stand mic. We'll probably notice that you're standing there after a little bit. We might even let you ask your question. If you ask a completely ridiculous question, we're going to let the rest of the people beat you up, so, no, I'm just kidding. You're encouraged to ask any question you want. You can even ask about why I'm wearing this white shirt, but everybody knows that. So I'm going to let them go down the line, let each person introduce themselves and tell us who they are. So we'll start with Adrian, I guess. So.
Hello. My name is Adrian Otto. I'm from Rackspace, and I'm here to talk about OpenStack. So I've been involved in 5 different OpenStack design summits. So it's a new project. We have a lot of facts to talk about today. I'll hand it on.
Awesome. So I'm Peder Ulander. I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing over at Citrix, responsible for both our CloudStack initiative as well as Zen.org. And look forward to talking about what we're doing.
Hi, I'm James Waters. I'm the Director of Ecosystem Development at Cloud Foundry. It's a VMware project, and we are a developer-focused platform as a service that's all open source.
So I'm Jimmy Guerrero, and I'm with Red Hat, specifically the OpenShift platform as a service, and again, geared towards developers, helping them get out of the business of managing servers and configuring software and getting back to code.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and launch into, I'm going to give each person a little chance to talk about their project and give us a little bit of details. If you guys are talking about this, the thing to talk about is, who do you see the primary target of your technology to be today? Is it IT people? Is it developers? And where is your project today, and what do you sort of see the next big thing coming down the pipeline? So, Adrian, if you want to go first, talk about where you see your project today, who you target, et cetera.
So I'm going to give you a couple numbers to start out with. So the OpenStack community has developed 550,000 lines of code. Now, for those of you that don't know what OpenStack is, it's an open source software that allows you to have your own cloud, private or public. It's been downloaded 300,000 times. The OpenStack Foundation, which is the newly found organization for supporting the OpenStack project and evangelizing it and protecting it, now has 5,600 members. Of those, 850 companies are represented, and from them, 550 developers have committed code. There are 38 user groups globally for the project. So when it started 2 years ago, we had no idea that it would take off like it has, and we've been thrilled. Rackspace's perspective on cloud is that it should be open. You shouldn't be locked into a single vendor, and you should have options. So the software that Rackspace uses to run its cloud, which is the second largest public cloud in the world, runs the OpenStack software, and you can also run the OpenStack software in your own data center. So it would appeal to a an IT manager. If you own a lot of hardware and you want to do some form of virtualization and you want to go to the next step and say, I want this to be an on-demand resource, I want to give my consumers an API, I want this to be billed based on its consumption on an hourly basis, then you should really look into OpenStack as an option for making your own cloud.
Okay, Peder?
So from Citrix's perspective, we have two open source projects that are help powering a number of different cloud services out there. Long before I got to Citrix, a little over a year ago, there was Zen.org. And for those who might not know, Zen Source as well as Zen Server, so the open source component and the commercial component are actually powering 3 of the world's largest clouds, from Rackspace to Amazon to GoGrid. At the same time, about 3.5, 4 years ago, a small company out of Cupertino, California called Cloud.com built a small open source project specifically designed to help businesses, enterprises, service providers build, manage, and run their own cloud services. And in the last 3 years, we've amassed about 150 customers, half of which are public cloud providers running cloud services on top of CloudStack. A year and a half ago, we were purchased by Citrix. And since we have opened that up and become part of the Apache Software Foundation, where we contributed the code, the copyrights, and all the patents into that foundation, where it's now independently governed and run with about, I would say, a third of the controlling interest today is actually Citrix, so 2/3 is actually running outside of Citrix. This has basically happened since April to today, and every day, both from a committer perspective and a contributor perspective, we're seeing significant growth outside of Citrix as a company and actually into the Apache Software Foundation. So I'm sure I saw some of the questions. We have a lot more with regards to who's contributing, where do we see it happening, and all that stuff. So we'll cover that there. But I think one of the interesting things to think about, specifically as it relates to open source clouds, and you look at the panel that's up here, I think from business perspective, many would consider us all competitors. The reality is open source is about collaboration and co-opetition. And I can tell you, across every single one of the folks sitting up here, there are many clouds that are actually using all of our code in order to go run that. And I think that's actually the true measure of where success in open source happens.
Yeah, thanks. So Cloud Foundry, show of hands, people who've heard of it? Good. So this developer conference, I'd hope to have good penetration there. It's about 1.5 years old. It came out in April of 2011. And in that time, we've amassed hundreds of thousands of developers that have either signed up for our services or partner services. We've seen very strong developer adoption. The key thing I'd want to say about why does Cloud Foundry exist, as a developer, one problem you have is that traditionally, when you write an application, you'd like it to be portable. And in today's cloud environments, say if you have a very Amazon-centric view of the world, when you write an application for Amazon, say it uses some specific Amazon services, you're tied there. So with Cloud Foundry, the reason the open source is so vital and important is that it allows you to have a multi-cloud interface to different clouds, be that a private cloud, be that Amazon, be that Rackspace. And keeping it completely open source is one vehicle to get there. And the other angle of that is we've encouraged partners to stand up Cloud Foundry-based clouds in addition to VMware. We have cloudfoundry.com, which has lots and lots of users, but we also have a partner, AppFog, which was originally PHP Fog, which very much caters to PHP developers. And they chose to use Cloud Foundry's open source software to create a multi-cloud service of their own that you can have compatibility between cloudfoundry.com, between AppFog, between a private instantiation of our code. It's all written in, it's all available in Apache license. And in addition to just the bits that run cloudfoundry.com, we also released our orchestration and management toolchain called Bosch. So we've really done a radical approach to what I would call open source cloud services. And every day, I was looking before I came out, and we had a last update 16 minutes ago. We update the exact bits that are running on cloudfoundry.com and the toolchain used to deploy them. The exact package that you have, you can go deploy yourself. So that's all driving towards our vision of truly multi-cloud deployment enablement for developers.
Should have done my pitch. So a very similar story as Cloud Foundry with Red Hat's OpenShift is that we announced about a year and a half ago, and you know, since then we've doubled our user base quarter after quarter. And what's interesting about OpenShift, aside from supporting all the usual runtimes that you're going to expect, everything from Java, Ruby, PHP, Zen, Perl, even Python and Node.js and all your popular databases, is that it's really geared towards developers, with the idea being that you just, as a developer, innovation happens on the app. It doesn't necessarily happen on the server. You really want to get out of that business of managing servers and configuring software and figuring out how to get that stuff to scale, that you really want to focus on your customers and your code. So it's really an enabling technology to help you get there, to get into that mindset. And in the same way that, as far as open sourcing, it's obviously very critical to us at Red Hat. All the bits are available, right? All the bits that we use to run our hosted service, you can download and you can use. And if you wanted to compete it with us, I guess you could also do that too. But that's kind of the whole idea to the previous point, is that with open source, it's all about collaboration and being able to bring in partners like Zend or any other partner that wants to join us and make their services available. I think unlike the ecosystem that's being built on Cloud Foundry, I think where we kind of differ on the OpenShift side is that instead of our partners taking our bits and building their own PaaSes, which I suppose that they could, we more encourage them to come to our PaaS like we did with Zen, so that as an end user, if you want to get a deep experience with Java and you also want to get a deep experience, for example, with PHP with Zen, you can actually do that on the same PaaS, where you don't necessarily have to go to a different PaaS. But maybe that's just different strokes for different folks. But I think what's interesting is that there's many common paths that a lot of the folks I think up here are taking, and there's just some subtle different ones that we are. So there's probably more commonality here than there is differences.
So as a follow-on question, a couple of people mentioned the open source license that you were licensed under, and I'd like to actually just sort of go down the line and talk about which open source license the software is licensed under and why that license was chosen, because I think that's an interesting thing for people when they're looking at open source licenses. Why do you pick the license that you pick, and how do you go about that process? And since Jimmy had the mic last, I'll start that way and I'll move back this way.
I mean, it just creates the least amount of friction for people who want to get involved.
Okay.
Apache. And I think that's important in services. If you wanted to be a little bit more restrained, MongoDB, for instance, uses AGPL, which is, they're trying to build a big company as well. And I think that's the really decision if you go something really restrictive and viral, or Apache. And if you want a lot of multi-cloud environments, so you want other people to deploy it, be able to tweak it for themselves, we had to have that. At the time, I had actually argued both sides of the coin, but I'm really glad with the ecosystem we have now with Apache.
Don't you always argue both sides of the coin?
I try.
Okay, so we're Apache, but that wasn't always the case. I've been in open source long enough to have respect for a number of different licenses out there. And when we first launched CloudStack as an open source project, we did it under GPL, believing in the share and share alike model. One of the interesting things that happened probably about a year ago was running into enterprise deployments. In order to get enterprises to not only contribute or participate in your community, but there's many enterprises that actually have rules that say if a software technology is GPL based, you cannot run it inside our IT systems. That's a massive barrier to adoption and engagement, and that's essentially what forced us to change to the Apache software license, and it's driven, it's removed all the barriers with regards to enterprise adoption, as well as opened up for significant developer contribution.
OpenStack also uses the Apache 2.0 license for many of the same reasons. We anticipated, since OpenStack is really about the infrastructure level, that it would be bundled into lots of other types of technologies and other commercial products. So we needed a license that would be compatible with selling that as a commercial product.
Okay. Now, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it would be safe to say that like OpenStack and CloudStack lean a little bit more towards the infrastructure focus, infrastructure as a service focus, and Cloud Foundry and OpenShift lean a little bit more towards platform as a service. I think this is more directed at the infrastructure guys. You know, where do you see your project going, and do you see platform as a service type concepts coming into the project in you know, I'll call it the semi-near future, or do you want to stay focused on the infrastructure layer? You know, I'll let Peder go first, I guess.
So, you know, there's a number of things to solve at every layer in the cloud. So to say, you know, that we want the project to go boil the ocean and own everything would probably be disastrous for the project. So we're very focused on really defining and driving the infrastructure layer within the cloud and making the best solution for effectively removing that management of VMs and servers for the developers. You also have to think of who the buy side is on that. The buy side at infrastructure is the sysadmins, the IT admins, you know, some of the DevOps guys versus the raw developers that you get at the platform layer. From a developer perspective, we partner with every single one of these guys. As I mentioned before, we've got implementations where Cloud Foundry might be sitting on top of CloudStack, or we've done a number of things with OpenShift, as well as a number of the proprietary PaaS platforms out in the market.
Okay. And Adrian, same question?
Okay, so first I want to mention, so there are three things about OpenStack that I think are special, right? The first is that it's open. And when I say open, I'm talking about open source, open development, and most products stop there. We go beyond that and say, okay, we're going to have open design, meaning we get together every 6 months and all of the members of the foundation talk about what the software should be. Okay, and that's where the decisions are made with respect to where this is going. And then the third strength is what I call extensibility. OpenStack was designed to be extended. So the APIs are extendable, the data model is extendable, there's a modular design for the services that are there. So it allows for people to plug in their own stuff. And I'll give you some examples. Where we're seeing the most growth right now is in the Quantum project, which is the network service, and in the storage services, like the block, we call this the Cinder project, the block storage service. And what's happening there is that companies like Cisco and like storage companies like Nicira is very, very active in the community. What they're doing is they're taking the base OpenStack software and putting their own special stuff in the extensions. They're building their own extensions. So they're not changing the underlying technology, they're adding their own stuff. And so OpenStack as a project is really focused on enabling all of that innovation at the higher levels. So we allow other companies to focus, and that's why there's 850 companies registered with the foundation, because they're all going to do something a little bit different.
So that was, I'm gonna say that was a very presidential debate-like answer. So in a way, you didn't answer the question, which is, are you focusing mostly on infrastructure at this point? And is that the direction at this point, or?
Yes, it focuses primarily on infrastructure. I mean, if you look at the mission, the mission says to produce the ubiquitous open source cloud computing platform that will meet the needs of public and private cloud providers regardless of size.
Okay.
So
but fun trivia fact, it was started as a PaaS at NASA. It was called Popcorn, and it was written to consolidate 1,000 web applications that NASA had at the time.
Yep.
And Josh got sick of the eucalyptus license because they wouldn't take his commits, so he started building his own bottoms up. So it actually started as a PaaS, just as an interesting, kind of factoid there.
Right, that's true. And you'll notice that almost every respectable PaaS supports some infrastructure choice, right?
Right.
I mean, your story is a multi-cloud story. One of the clouds that's supported is OpenStack. It's true with AppFog, it's true with Cloud Foundry, it's true with just about any PaaS. You're going to be able to choose whatever infrastructure cloud you want underneath.
Okay. So basically, to summarize it, it looks like we have sort of two really good competing infrastructure technologies and two good competing PaaS technologies. PaaS technologies both work on top of both of these technologies, so you can sort of mix and match. I don't know if you guys want to comment a little bit on where you see, sort of the next big thing for for the PaaS technology, where do you see it going? Is there something that you're getting a lot of requests for that you think you need to add in the near future?
So I think what's interesting at Red Hat, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Red Hat now is either the top corporate code contributor for OpenStack. So what's interesting at Red Hat is that obviously open source is in our DNA. So it's interesting the kind of depth that you're going to get with people who want to build a cloud or want to use a cloud depending on where they want to engage. For example, I work a lot with mobile developers, so it's an interesting breed of mobile developers really want to focus on innovating on the app, on the front end, and they really could care less on what's happening on the back end as long as it scales and it gives them what they need. So they're really looking for a platform with like maximum automation. It's hosted. They don't care about private PaaS or infrastructure as a service. They really want to just upload their code and move on to the next thing. Whereas you see, if you're an enterprise developer and you want to get a lot of that agility and a lot of that goodness that a PaaS brings to the table, you still have to interact with enterprise IT. And enterprise IT isn't going to just stand up a PaaS and let you go at it. They really are going to want to be able to deliver that PaaS with a certain amount of control and a certain amount of security, and they have a lot of requirements. And I think that's where it gets interesting with, a PaaS that comes behind the firewall versus the PaaS that you consume in a hosted model is going to be very different and have a lot of different requirements. And obviously the level of interaction that an enterprise IT shop is going to have with the infrastructure as a service layer is going to be a lot different. So it's unique what the challenges are and what the desires and the wants are, depending on what your role is and what you're trying to get out of it. So I think at Red Hat, we're kind of uniquely positioned to be able to offer everything from the operating system to the virtualization to now the infrastructure as a service to the software to manage the infrastructure as a service to the platform as a service to an application server, and now being able to partner up with Zend to offer enterprise-grade Zend. It just becomes really interesting and really compelling, the amount of open source technologies that you have and the pieces that you can put together to kind of to deliver the cloud or the PaaS that is going to suit your needs.
So, James, from your perspective, is there something, big that's on the horizon for you, or something that you want to?
I mean, I think big has so many dimensions, right? Peder mentioned the buy side. So there's people who are buying this stuff, maybe putting it in their shop. Intel said when they saw the massive investment we're making in Cloud Foundry, they said that's the future for us. And they'd had a really interesting journey previously where they had gone from 6-month VM deployment times down to 6-minute VM deployment times with VMware's basic vSphere. But they said that hasn't really compressed our application life cycle that much. That helps to fire a VM at a developer, but it doesn't really enable them. And our ambition with Cloud Foundry and adopting Cloud Foundry is to go from idea to production in a day. And that's maybe a 5 or 10 year vision that they have, but they really want to change how much IT gets in the way of an idea versus enables it. But that would be what I'd call like the buy side, the guy that's actually buying it. And you have to give them certain features. Maybe for us that would be enhancing BOSH, the way it's deployed, adding a GUI to BOSH, something like that. Whereas for developers, they might want the latest and greatest Node.js that's out. So we've started ramping up how quickly we update our Node versions, because each incremental tick is actually needed by the developer to stay on train. So I think it's actually a hard question to answer, like what's big, because there's different dimensions of who's interested.
Okay, and Adrian gave us some pretty interesting statistics about contributions and other people. How many companies are contributing? Obviously, each one of these is roughly associated. You all work for a commercial company. Obviously, Rackspace is contributing to OpenStack. Citrix is contributing to CloudStack. Can you give us an example of some of the bigger companies that are contributing, and then give us just some sort of a feel, each of you, for how much of the contributions are coming from bigger companies and how much of it's coming from sort of individual contributors and people who are just passionate and want to contribute? So I'll let Adrian go first.
Okay, so there's a history with the OpenStack project. It was, the first founders of the project were NASA and Rackspace, who each contributed a service. NASA came with Nova, which is what the compute service is, and Rackspace came with the storage service, the object storage, which is called Swift. And so day one, the only contributors were Rackspace and NASA, and that's it. But over time, that developed. and there have been more and more and more. So usually when you put up the slide and it's a pie chart of who's contributing to a project, usually there's like one sponsor who does all of the contributions, and there's just a little peppering of other people on that pie chart.
Do you think that's, I'm just going to stir the pot. So how many people have used Redis? How many people have used OpenStack? Okay, so Redis has 2 contributors, just for the record. Nginx, also similar. Just a few people working very hard on a project, but lots and lots of developers using it, completely open source, just as a talking point here.
Right, but this isn't a room full of IT either.
Yeah, just saying that I do think there's sometimes asymmetry between the number of contributors and the number of users that's interesting. And Redis, I happen to be good drinking friends with one of the 2 contributors to Redis. And it's been incredibly successful, and not because there's always a big kind of committee of designers.
But they're probably counterexamples
So here's
as well.
my-
I mean, so for example,
I'm literally just stirring the pot
I
for
mean,
conversation.
Linux probably started with a core group of people, but now if you look at Linux, I mean, there are thousands of people and hundreds of companies that contribute to Linux. And I think Jimmy probably knows that as well as anybody down there on the other end. So, what I'm really interested in for people to get a feel for is, is the majority of the contributions coming from sort of corporate sponsored, contribution to open source, or is it individual contributors? And just I want to just get a feel for what your community looks like. So if people out here are interested in getting involved, they'll know what the sort of the feel of the community is. So it doesn't have to be anything specific. Just want to get a highlight for how you see your community and the ratio of people and the feel for how the community operates.
So the point of my answer was that it's shrinking. Rackspace is shrinking. Red Hat is growing. Okay, and we're actually proud of that. We're proud that the project's taking on a life of its own. And there are, the top contributors are Rackspace, Red Hat, Nebula, HP, and ISI. And so Rackspace is about a quarter, Red Hat is climbing to almost a quarter, Nebula and HP are I think each over about 10%. And then there's another 60% of the project that's everybody else. So it does have a lot of individual contributors, but from a lines of code perspective, it's these top companies who are contributing most of the code.
And Peder?
Cool. So one of the interesting byproducts of joining the Apache Software Foundation is there are no corporate contributors. There's no such thing. The meritocracy is defined solely by the individuals that participate in the project. And if I were to add up the ones that I actually know what company they come from, Citrix, we represent less than a third of the total contributors on the project. I think if we were to go through and see where the individuals come from, they come, anywhere from Spotify out of Europe, right? So users, Overstock falls into that, Trader Media falls into that, to companies like SoftLayer, Dell, Red Hat, et cetera. They're all big names, but they're by no means driven by that corporate engagement. It still goes back to the passion of the individual that is participating in the community.
Okay.
So I'll speak to you on the OpenShift side. There's a couple of different ways that folks can get engaged. Obviously, whatever their motives might be. So at the lowest level, if you basically want to take the bits and you want to contribute patches and things like that, that opportunity is available to you, obviously, by the open source nature and the fact that the bits are out there. The other way that you can engage with the OpenShift community is, say, for example, you sign up for OpenShift and you see that there's 3 databases that are available there. There's MySQL, there's MongoDB, and there's Postgres, and you say, hey, I really want Redis. Well, the nice thing about it being not only just open source, but the fact that the platform itself is extensible is that you can build your own cartridge, and a cartridge is really nothing more than software that we've packaged up so you can call it very easily and it'll run on the platform. But there's nothing that prohibits you from taking your favorite piece of software, middleware, database, whatever it is, package it up, and then make it available inside of OpenShift. And over time, hopefully get it mainstream so it's available to other users. So that opportunity is available as well. But then we also built OpenShift with ease of use in mind, so that if you're an ISV or you're a developer that has your favorite, some software that you've written, maybe there's a blogging platform or a CMS or something like that, and you really want OpenShift users to be able to stand up that piece of software with literally a line or two of code you have the ability to build quick starts on GitHub so that people can sign up for OpenShift, they can download your quick start, and literally, with a line of code, they'll have your application up and running. So, those are just examples of different ways that you can engage inside of the OpenShift community to basically make your software, your bits available, or engage in whatever way that you want. And I guess the final piece on a higher level piece on the community side is that if you're a partner and you want to make your particular piece of software available on OpenShift, then obviously you can engage with us like Zen did, and you can basically have that stuff there. So there's a variety of different ways that you can engage inside of OpenShift.
Having stirred the pot, I'll come back to how we do have a lot of contributors. So as soon as we made the decision to go Apache, the light went on and said we could allow language specialization within Cloud Foundry because VMware was the primary sponsor of Spring, and we had a growing engineering team around Ruby, and Node.js was a big investment for us as well. But in areas like PHP, I reached out to AppFog, and they became what we have a formal program called Community Lead for PHP. They're responsible for answering questions in our forums, contributing code patches back. They sponsored that. Also in .NET, we have 2 companies that were founded to contribute to .NET support to Cloud Foundry. And when we did the OpenStack support, actually it came between Piston, who I'm very closely friends with them, and some folks who were developing and using OpenStack and Cloud Foundry together in Spain. And they came together to make a contribution. So we've actually had a lot of diverse contributions to Cloud Foundry. But it's always very important to me to measure open source software also by how well it works. And the thing with Cloud Foundry is from day one, there was a running service available on thousands and thousands of nodes that you could deploy your app to, and it really worked from day one. So I just don't like getting caught up sometimes in the tangle of more contributors. It's sort of like the mythical man month. You can run into that.
So I'm going to ask one more question, which I think will be a good one that might spark a little back and forth. And then I'm going to open the floor up to people to ask questions. So if you've been thinking about something, get prepared to come to one of the mics and ask your question. So I'm going to ask each person to talk about one thing that they think is a true strength of their particular technology, one thing that you think you've done particularly well. And I'm also going to ask you to mention one thing that you wish had been done differently, because I think it's always interesting with projects. You get a certain way through, you go, damn, I wish we'd done, in Zen's case, with Zen Server 6, we just released the new Zen Server 6 beta, and the way that the clustering is handled is completely different. And I think there's nobody at Zen now that doesn't look at how we did it this time around and went, I wish we'd done that differently when we released Zen Server 5, and so with Zen Server 6, we got a chance to fix that. There's always something like that. So I'll start with Peder, if we can. And one thing that you consider a real strength of CloudStack technologically, and one thing that you consider the thing you wish you'd done differently or wish had been done differently.
The biggest strength for CloudStack, I think, really comes down to the usability aspect, right? And this kind of comes in the shape of the architecture all the way through the end user experience, getting to deployment at scale with companies that are, past the 20, 30,000 server perspective, and doing it in a way where they only have a handful of sysadmins managing that cloud is a tremendous feat that I think sets us apart from many in the marketplace, and has definitely been one of the drivers of the business and the deployments that we have. What do I wish we could have done? And to be honest with you, it isn't so much from a technology perspective, and a lot of that is because the space we're in is so new. The technology changes every day. If I were to pick one, it would be hard because we come across something every day that, wish we could have done that differently. The thing that has driven a lot of visibility into that has been the fact that we did the Apache thing here in April. I wish we did it 3 years ago, because that has sparked more innovation, more momentum, and more eyes going in and challenging the way we look at things on a daily basis. And I wish we would have done that earlier.
Okay.
So I think that the strengths for OpenShift, I think I kind of already talked a little bit about them, and they're actually very common with some of the other things that are going on here, which is that just by the fact that it's open source, the extensibility, I think, which is a huge factor and a huge strength, because it means that anyone can come to OpenShift and get out of it what they need to or put back into it what they need to. So that to me is the real strength, the ability that Red Hat can actually put together a complete cloud solution that's open source from top to bottom. I think that's a pretty powerful strength. I think the thing that I wish that we would have done differently, and just kind of speaking as a marketing weenie, is I wish that we would have driven a little bit harder to open source OpenShift ahead of Cloud Foundry, because it really made my job kind of interesting for the first few months.
All right, so I talked about strengths already. I'll highlight extensibility also. This is something where we spent a lot of energy when we were designing OpenStack to make sure that it would work with, if you're trying to do something special with storage, that there's a way to do that. If you want to do something special with networking, that there's a way that you can actually plug in and do it differently rather than just accept what the project offers you. In terms of what I wish we may have done differently is maybe we could have produced the dashboard sooner. Horizon only really came in recently, so there really wasn't a front end. The first few releases of the product were just entirely API services and didn't really have a face, so it was really hard to conceptualize what the product was without the web user interface.
I think for Cloud Foundry, what do we do well? I think I'd put it in two buckets. One is that there's been really a strict focus on engineering quality from day one on the project, which is why I go back to the usability of software. So Mark Lukowski, who has been the engineering leader of this project, also wrote a lot of Windows NT back in the day, which is something that lasted a very long time. And so I've learned to be very picky around scalability, performance, and quality from working with that team, and that's something I'm very proud of. And I think that's one reason, that you can run this at such high scale under such demanding loads, and why AppFog was able to go from 0 apps to 60,000 apps with the Cloud Foundry open source code in 5 months. If we hadn't, really spent the time getting that right, I don't think they could have been as successful that fast, and that's amazing to me. In terms of what could we have done better, I guess I'll use an open source NIT as one thing I could say. We didn't have a frequency of completely developing an open repo when we first came out, and it took us a couple months to do that, and that was sheerly from a logistics standpoint of, we had the engineers working in one repo and when we were moving it out to GitHub, and then now we have a public Garrett system where everyone can see every commit and every vote that happens publicly. And that created a few months where I got calls like, hey, you guys are going to continue to open source, so that's a best practice. Every commit should be out in public.
Okay, I have a few more questions that I could ask, but I'd like to open the floor up to people out here in the audience. I'm sure you have some questions that you'd like to ask the people on this panel about these projects. Anybody have a question? Somebody's running towards a microphone.
Hello, there we go. This may or may not be a good question. I'm fairly ignorant on this stuff. I traditionally work at a very small team, and so I'm used to spinning up VPSs, and so the types of services that you guys offer are exactly the things that I've hoped for the future and have looked forward to. Having basically never used any yet and seen lots of names floating around, including things like AppFog and all of you guys, where do I start? I'm a small team. I'm not not in the sphere of needing to spin up a whole cloud of IT infrastructure. It's just not my particular problem. So where do I start to get into this, to transition from sort of the VPS model into sort of this newer model? Thank you.
So that was a great question, and I think one of the benefits of being open source is the fact that not only do we have visible communities where you can go learn from all the different participants and understand how these technologies can impact you, but many of us also sell through and support through service providers and service offerings. So whether it's a DevStack demo environment for you to come in and short-term try out a cloud, to actually going to some of the companies that have built their technologies based on our offerings. For OpenStack, you can definitely go check out things like Rackspace's cloud. For CloudStack, we've got a number of clouds out there as well, and many of them are actually offering free accounts. So for your first 10 servers, 20 servers, that's the fastest way to get started, understand how this works, and how it fits with your dev team.
I'll just say that appfog.com is a great place to start. It's important for us that we have both running services to cater to that kind of need that you've just described, as well as code you can install yourself. AppFog gives you 2 gigs free to get going. So it literally will take 5 minutes of your time to get out there and get 2 gigs of of RAM for free. So I think that's a good way to go.
Adrian.
So on the OpenShift side, the easiest way to get started is just go down to the booth in the exhibit hall and we'll get you all hooked up. But the workflow is really basic. Basically, all it takes is an email address, openshift.com, sign up, and you're off to the races. You get 3 free gears, which are essentially, I guess you can think of them as VMs to run your applications on. And they've got enough resources to make a real go at it. And essentially on the tooling side, you can either use our web console that we have, or if you want to go to the command line, it's basically a gem install. You install the client tools. It's basically pushing and pulling with Git. So if you're familiar with Git, that's the protocol that we use. You're in business, it's nothing fancier than that. If your tooling is Zen Studio or any of the Eclipse-based tooling, there's probably integration for OpenShift for it. So there's not really a new way to learn how to work or how to develop, but getting bolted into something like OpenShift is really, really easy. And I think Kent's going to talk later about the workshop that's going on. You might have seen Andy's keynote earlier today. It's pretty straightforward to get started. So I think ease of use is a big thing that we've been talking about, because if it's not easy to use, no one's going to use it.
Adrian.
So Rackspace's answer would be, we have a product called Cloud Sites. It supports a PHP stack. It currently runs over 300,000 PHP applications. It scales really, really well. So I'd urge you to take a look at that. It's really easy. You just put your code on it and go. If you're the type who doesn't like the platform as a service angle because you want more freedom and you want more control, and you'd like to be able to customize your environment more, maybe you want to run a newer Zen server than they offer in the platform, or you want to do something special with Redis, or you want to do something with Memcache that the platform doesn't offer you, you could use our cloud servers product. So if you're familiar with VPSs, it's very similar. You can size your servers up and down. It's very easy to manage it through a web interface. You can start using the API if you want to get more creative with it. That'd be my recommendation.
Okay. Over here.
This may be a little bit low level for this crowd, but I'm just curious if you guys could talk about your interactions or utilization of Open Compute.
So I'm not an expert on how we use Open Compute, but I do know this. In Texas, in San Antonio this year, we hosted the Open Compute event. I have seen designs of servers that are designed to use that technology. I've seen, essentially the idea is if you take all the stuff out of the server that you don't need for the server to run in the cloud, that it operates at a lower power, you can get better density, there are lessons learned from cooling, and these lessons that we're learning at a hardware perspective are happening they're happening at Facebook, they're happening at Yahoo, they're happening at Google, and Open Compute is a way that you can take all of that knowledge and kind of express it in a single place where you really understand what's the best practice for putting a server together. How do you cool them? How do you power them? How do you, how do you connect them to the network? How do you get the right, I/O performance out of these things? And so I do know that Rackspace is a huge proponent of the OCP, and will continue to contribute to that.
Okay. Anybody else?
So, I mean, the reality is this is Open Compute, great initiative, early project, looking at some of the leaders and how they're building stuff. But I think from an infrastructure perspective, we have to look at all the different plays that are happening in the marketplace, whether it's Open Compute to the UCS gear from Cisco to what ARM is doing with regards to moving their stuff into serverland and the likes. And from Citrix's perspective, as well as from the project's perspective, we're constantly engaged with all of the different vendors and making sure that we're building to adapt and adopt to what customers are looking for. And as Open Compute grows beyond Facebook, Google, and Yahoo, and actually starts hitting mainstream customers, that's probably where this stuff will take more light. And you'll see better engagement from a community perspective.
Anybody else want to comment? You have any follow-on question or?
We primarily support infrastructure as a service. That's our primary finding there.
As sort of a future forward-looking into this more opinion, as you see Open Compute grow, you might see sort of commodification of the data center, and then on top of that, if you guys are really open on your design, so like say with OpenStack, basically people can run it anywhere. If the low level's commodified and then the center sort of chunk is open, then at the end of the day, what are you guys doing that's going to make us
What-
want to stay with you instead
What-
of the next commodified
Well,
Yeah, so that's a competitive.
Let me comment on that first, because I think it's an interesting comment, I think, that happens in every industry. So, I mean, PC hardware is kind of commoditized, and Open Compute may commoditize it even more. But, everything gets commoditized over time. You get operating systems, and eventually they became a commodity. So then people invented application servers, and then eventually application servers become a commodity, and everything moves into open source, and eventually it becomes a commodity. And you have to figure out what the next big thing is. And so, you could argue, and perhaps, two people on this panel might object. You could argue that infrastructure as a service, it's been around longer, it's going to get commoditized sooner. Platform as a service is quite frankly a little bit more vague, and so people can, there's more room for innovation over time. But you're right, eventually everything gets commoditized, and you have to move on to the next big thing, whatever that is. Now, I don't know if you guys want to comment on top of that, or make some other, or tell me I'm a complete idiot.
Well, no,
Either one's possible.
Yeah, no, well, hey, you said it, I didn't.
Yeah.
The reality is everything commoditizes, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, you would say Linux is commoditized, yet Red Hat's sitting there with $1 billion in revenue, right? And they continue to grow. Commoditization is great. I think from a project perspective, you have to continue to innovate. Saying infrastructure as a service commoditizes, the low-level stuff, turning on a VM, turning on some storage, and giving you some network, absolutely. That commoditized, 5 years ago with the mainstream adoption of Amazon at that point. We as companies have to continue to innovate and solve for customers, even in a commoditized space, right? That's the only way we're going to be successful. Red Hat was successful not because they said, it's commoditized, we're going to sell it to you cheaper. They continued to innovate on top of what was commoditized and deliver that to the market. And I think, in any industry, whether it's technology or what have you, as you hit these standards and as you hit this low threshold of cost and accessibility, the companies that shine are the ones that take that as a platform and build on top of it. Right? That doesn't necessarily mean that I need to go into the platform as a service or start writing applications and the likes. There's always something to solve with regards to the core technology, and there's always something for us to focus on, especially at the infrastructure layer.
So Rackspace's answer to that question is one word: the service. So service is our differentiator, and we really don't care what gets commoditized underneath. In fact, Red Hat is a perfect example where their software, they give away the source code. Yeah. The software is free. It's a $1 billion company.
But the binary, man. Don't get me started.
Anyway, it really doesn't matter. There's always going to be, the more technology that you use, the more you aspire to do more creative things with it, and that just creates new opportunity.
Any other questions from the audience? I can't believe only 2 people in this audience actually had anything. Oh, another person waving their arms, and you don't really have to run.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to close.
No, I wasn't going to close. I was going to embarrass somebody into coming up, and it worked.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm new to this cloud space as well as the first question. And I also come from the educational industry where we have some strict rules as to how data should be stored and controlled. And so my question is, what, for those industries like mine, like education or financial or even medical, where we have very strict laws as to how data can be accessed, what security do you provide for each of your services in regard to storage?
Somebody pick it first.
I guess it would be storage and access of that data, outside of.
So, Adrian, you want to go first?
Okay, so the question is a trick question. And the reason why is even if you had all of the facilities necessary to secure and meet every technical need, people don't feel safe putting all of their data and all of their applications in a public cloud. That's just not realistic. You feel weird about it.
Yeah.
And that's why we have private clouds. So you can put all of the same protections and policies and technology and encryption and everything that you normally do to protect your data, you can do it the same way, and you can have a cloud within your own enterprise. So for the things that you do feel comfortable putting in a public cloud and using those advanced features like data encryption and secure sockets and all of these sort of technologies, you can go ahead and do that. But the truth is, you're probably not going to put your crown jewels in the cloud this year. You're probably going to want to keep it a little bit closer to your vest. And I think everybody in this panel would admit that this is the case. And that's why private cloud is an option for you.
Yeah, I would just add that one advantage of having a very big ecosystem is that you can have specialized providers. And so there's a company called Logicalis, which specializes, it's a VAR specializing in HIPAA. And they sell into HIPAA-regulated environments. And they've done a partnership with Uhuru, which is another ecosystem partner that contributed .NET, to do a Cloud Foundry-specific HIPAA-compliant consulting practice. So they can set up a private cloud for you that meets HIPAA standards. And that comes back to having a big ecosystem, because if you don't have that, you don't get the level of specialization to meet vertical specific requirements.
So first, you're not new. There was a session at a recent cloud event where James Staten of Forrester said that less than 3% of all enterprises have even done anything in the cloud. So we're all new. It's a new space, and it's still growing. So, it's great that you're here learning with us. Now, with regards to specialized industries, so academia, government, financial services, medical, et cetera, one of the trends that we're seeing, and many of them are funded by large government grants, are actually the creation of community clouds. Because on one side, because of data protection rules, sovereignty, and all those other things, you can't use a public cloud. But on the flip side, because of cut budgets and expertise, you can't use a private cloud. So what we're seeing is coalitions band together to build their own cloud. So whether you take a look at what's going on, actually I think the largest funding happened in Australia. They have something called the Nectar Project, which basically pulls together 5 universities. They're spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million, $200 million to go do that, to Japan, where we've actually built a community cloud in conjunction with 10 universities that are all chained together, universal access, universal solutions, all built to the security standards and compliance rules that are dictated by that industry. It's not only happening in academia. We're seeing that with regards to all of the GovCloud initiatives and how those are being put together. You're seeing this element of community cloud, and we're even seeing it in classic enterprise where security is key. One of the most interesting use cases I came across in the last few months is the fact that all the major motion picture studios, specifically around animation and rendering, they use 2 clouds to go do that. And they've all banded together to define all of the requirements, all of the security services, all of the data protection, and then basically created their own community level access to where they get the benefits of shared cost and shared management, et cetera, with all the rules and regulations in place to make sure that they feel secure as they go access these services.
So just also one other comment. Every one of these technologies is available, it's open source. So if you were using virtualization internally or you had servers internally and you wanted to turn those into a cloud, all of these technologies are available to you. You could basically set up your own private cloud, for your own services and get the benefits of cloud. It's when it's sort of the difference between public cloud, where there are these security concerns. It's interesting watching this from sort of outside the cloud space, as Zen has, and then starting to move into the cloud space. I think 3 years ago, if you'd asked anybody if they would put stuff in the public cloud, security was like the #1 concern. I don't think it's still a big concern, but I don't think it's the #1 concern anymore. It's interesting, and I think time will change that. But there are even regulatory compliance, like in Germany, you can't put any customer records in a server that's not in Germany. So there are literally cloud companies that make their living by providing a cloud in Germany because they know that people are going to need to have those servers physically located in Germany. Frankly, I look at that and I can't figure out how that's actually really makes a difference, but that's the law, so such as it is.
It's not only Germany, it's Australia, it's New Zealand, it's Japan. It's all over the place. There's this data sovereignty issue. Where there are specific rules around data within borders.
No, I understand it exists. I just, frankly, I don't understand how it makes a difference, but I'm not responsible for making those laws, so I guess I'm go. That's the right person to ask.
So Clint, a question I might have, maybe kind of to turn it around, is that who here in the room is actually using some sort of a cloud technology? OpenShift, Cloud Foundry, Rackspace, AWS, something, right?
See, that's way different than it was last year, too. And how many people are using public clouds? How many people private clouds? Okay. A lot of private clouds. That's a lot more private clouds than last year, too. Okay, guys, we probably have time for one more question if it's a quick one. So we can't talk about, like, you know, world peace, but if we have one more quick question. If not, oh, yes, we do. Okay, great.
So this is for the PaaS guys. VMware, you don't seem to see AppFog and your other adopters like Tier 3 and such as a threat. In fact, you seem to encourage it, right?
Absolutely, it's my job, literally. They pay me to go do that.
That's fantastic. And OpenShift, you seem to not so much encourage this, and I'm wondering, A, do you see it as a threat to your own public offering? And so I'd like maybe both of you to say why or why not you feel that way.
So on our side, I think we're taking a different approach as far as if encouragement is that comes into play. And I think 2-3 weeks ago when we made the announcement with Zend, the idea is that a company like Zend should be able to bring their software and their services to the OpenShift platform as opposed to taking the OpenShift code, forking it, putting their code on it, and then making it available to their users or to their customers. That I think we're taking a different approach where there's nothing that prevents anyone from, you know, a company like AppFog or anybody else to basically take the OpenShift code, fork it, and go make their stuff available on it. I think there's just more value that a company like Zend, for example, finds in using OpenShift as it is, the service, and it can present more value to the end users. So there's nothing that says that either one can't happen. It just seems like the preferred model for us and for our partners is for them to bring their products and their services to the platform as it exists.
Plus, we don't have to pay for the machines that run over at OpenShift.
Yeah,
They
kinda
pay
cheap.
for them.
So thanks for the note on that. I would just say that we have a fundamental philosophy that developer technologies only win when they're ubiquitous. Like, there are not a lot of niche developer technologies left. Like, they tend to go big or go home. And if you look at, say, GitHub.com, it has, over the last 3 years, overcome a lot of other specialized places where people were doing something similar and is now kind of a default de facto. And we wanted Cloud Foundry to be, you know, if you will, the GitHub of PaaS, not just a niche enterprise PaaS. We wanted it to be everywhere you went, on every cloud you went to. And that's why we've worked very diligently to try to promote people who could help us enable that faster.
Okay, thank you for the panelists here. Hopefully this was a useful thing for everybody. I've got a few more small housekeeping items before I let you out of here. One, the reception tonight in the exhibit hall is sponsored by Red Hat. Thank you very much, Jimmy. And in the reception there'll be food and, of course, beer, because that's always what you guys want. We mentioned the hackathon. It's filling up fast. It may actually be full, depending on how many of you signed up while you were in this room. And there is one other little piece of information.
It's full.
Full.
We'll open it
All
up.
right, so it's full. It almost filled up. We extended it by 10 more people that we have no idea how we're going to handle, and now that's full. So, sorry, hackathon's full. If you want to get free beer, you're going to have to find another place to get free beer. One last thing. Oops, I brought the wrong card. Oh, no, I brought the right card. I just buried it under my laptop. One last thing to talk about. There is a Wheel of Fortune thing that's going to happen in the exhibit hall tonight, Elaine, Wheel of Fortune. If you go around and you get stamps from the various vendors that are on this Wheel of Fortune card that was in your bag, then you get a chance to spin the wheel. So you can drop it in a box and we'll pull it out and you spin the wheel. There's all sorts of interesting things on the wheel, ranging from, of course, free beer, to other things like software licenses for products, cool hoodies, other things that you might get. So just want to let everybody know, try the Wheel of Fortune. You might win something really cool. You might get a free beer, but hey, free beer is free beer. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Thanks for attending this panel, and go back to the conference and learn something.